The clink of crystal glasses and the warm hum of polite conversation once defined the glamorous life of Ethan Reynolds, a self-made millionaire who seemed to have it all, until an affair with his vivacious mistress threatened to shatter everything he built. Lies whispered in dimly lit hotel rooms, secrets buried beneath the weight of wealth and power. Petit twibut, but perfection is an illusion. And betrayal, when it comes, doesn't just wound, it transforms. But betrayal has a way of igniting vengeance in the most unexpected places. This is the story of how trust fractured, how hearts hardened, and how revenge took center stage. Ethan, as a kid, growing up in a modest suburban home, he often pored over business magazines, gazing at the powerful figures who dominated the world stage. He pinned pictures of real-life moguls on his bedroom wall. Warren Buffett, Bernard Arnault, Jeff Bezos, imagining the day he hews his empire. Reynolds Cyber Solutions, specialized in pioneering cybersecurity solutions for international corporations, catapulting him to a level of financial success most could only dream of. He had built his life brick by brick, rising from nothing, carving out a legacy meant to last generations. He was a man who conquered everything in his path, until he conquered himself. He met Olivia Carter at a charity gala in Los Angeles. Olivia, with her flowing chestnut hair and gentle demeanor, was a pediatric nurse who ran a volunteer program for disadvantaged children. She hailed from a humble background too, and her compassion and sincerity enthralled Ethan from the moment he saw her across the crowded ballroom. He introduced himself, heart-pounding, not quite sure if such a radiant woman would give him a second glance. But Olivia recognized in him a tender vulnerability behind his carefully tailored suit. Though wealthy men circled that gala like hawks, Olivia soon found Ethan refreshingly genuine. His confidence wasn't arrogance, but determination. His charm wasn't rehearsed, but real. He made her feel like she was the only person in the room, and she, in turn, made him feel like the man he had always aspired to be. Over the months that followed, their romance grew with a kind of gentle ease that felt nothing short of magical. Olivia was unaccustomed to the flash of paparazzi cameras and the red carpet events that came with dating a rising tech star, but Ethan guarded her fiercely, determined to protect the sanctuary of their relationship. "You're my world," he had once whispered into her hair on a quiet evening. "I won't let anything ruin us." When he proposed at the Griffith Observatory, just the two of them under the sparkling city lights, she said yes between tearful laughter. Their wedding was grand, yet intimate, blending the extravagance of Ethan's newfound wealth with Olivia's grounded humility. The guests toasted to their future, unaware that one day, the same glasses raised in celebration would be shattered by the weight of infidelity. The extravagance of Ethan's newfound wealth blended with Olivia's grounded humility. For the first few years of their marriage, everything was idyllic. They lived in a sleek penthouse in Beverly Hills, traveling often to philanthropic events or romantic getaways in tropical destinations. People whispered that Ethan and Olivia personified the ultimate power couple. A charismatic businessman with a heart of gold, and a nurturing nurse who wanted to help heal the world. To outsiders, their life seemed perfect. But reality was more complex. Ethan, driven by both ambition and a burning desire to continue proving himself, never stopped pushing. Reynolds Cyber Solutions was attracting deals from the biggest firms across Europe and Asia. He worked long hours. He had grown up idolizing success stories and refused to let this chance slip away. Olivia supported him, but there were evenings she lay alone in bed, noticing the faint coffee stains on his shirts, the pungent aroma of stress, and wondering when he would finally come home before midnight. Eventually, that distance created cracks in what had once been an unbreakable bond. At first, it was simply the slow fade of romance into routine, even as they planned for children. Ethan became a stranger in his own home, quietly exhausted, emotionally absent. Olivia tried her best to be understanding, but with each lonely night, an invisible wall of tension rose between them. In the midst of this subtle drift, Ethan stumbled upon a woman who promised excitement and escape, a vibrant tornado named Naomi Sinclair. A marketing consultant with a portfolio of global brands under her belt, Naomi was every bit as driven as Ethan. But she came cloaked in intrigue. She had a sharp tongue, a penchant for whiskey on the rocks, and an irreverent sense of humor that both shocked and delighted him. Their paths crossed at an industry conference in San Francisco, where Naomi spoke eloquently about brand management in a crisis. Ethan admired her poise, her fierce intellect, her ability to command a room with a single glance. They shared drinks that evening in the hotel bar. One drink became two, then three. And soon, the conversation shifted from casual chatter about marketing trends to more personal confessions. Naomi revealed she had been engaged once, but called it off to pursue her global consulting career. Ethan described how he sacrificed personal time with Olivia for the sake of scaling Reynolds' cyber solutions. The more they talked, the more they recognized a hunger for adventure in each other, something dangerously unfulfilled in Ethan's life back in Beverly Hills. By the time the conference concluded, they had exchanged phone numbers under the guise of professional collaboration. A harmless gesture, a business connection, a thread so thin it should have been easy to sever. In truth, Ethan was already enthralled by Naomi's audacity. She was refreshing where Olivia was comforting, unpredictable where Olivia was steady, and that unpredictability sparked a thrill inside him. A thrill he hadn't felt since the early days of his business ventures. Back when risk was exhilarating, when every deal felt like a gamble, when success was just one bold move away. Yet guilt pulsed in Ethan's mind every time he thought of Olivia. He recalled her unwavering support throughout his career, the nights she stayed up waiting for him, the whispered prayers she uttered for his success. She had built him up when the world doubted him, stood by him when investors wavered, loved him when all he had was ambition and a dream. He remembered the charitable work she undertook, and how it aligned so perfectly with the philanthropic mission he wanted for Reynolds Cyber Solutions. Most of all, he remembered her gentle smile, the day he told her he wanted a family, a big, loving home, to make up for all the emptiness he'd known as a child. He had promised her forever. And yet, here he was, standing at the edge of betrayal, wondering if he had the strength to turn back. But desire is a powerful force, and it lured Ethan down a path of deception. Late-night phone calls to Naomi were disguised as client calls. Texts filled with inside jokes and stolen confessions blurred the line between business and infatuation. Weekend getaways turned into business trips. When he was with her, the world glowed in sharp, exhilarating colors. Everything felt heightened. The way she laughed, the way she challenged him, the way she made him forget the man he once was. Still, a tiny voice in the back of his mind questioned whether the price for this ecstasy was worth it. Olivia sensed something was off. She couldn't put her finger on it, but the emotional distance had grown too wide. Ethan had always been busy, but lately it was different. His touch felt colder, his presence more fleeting, as if he were already halfway out the door. She tried to open up a dialogue, but every time she asked if he was all right, Ethan brushed her off, claiming exhaustion, insisting he needed to focus on the next big contract. Meanwhile, his phone buzzed with messages from Naomi at odd hours. And then, in a twist so unexpected it seemed unreal, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. Nervous and ecstatic, she imagined this was a sign. They would heal. A baby would bring them closer. Love would tether them back together, stronger than before. In her mind, everything would fall into place. They would become a family at last. She fantasized about telling Ethan in a sweet, unforgettable way, a note hidden under his coffee mug, an ultrasound photo in a frame. She envisioned the way his face would light up, how he would pull her into his arms, whisper promises of the future. But something in his demeanor felt so distant. She worried he might barely register the news in the flurry of his business deals. Lately, she felt like a fading photograph in his life. Still there, but slowly losing color. In the quiet corners of her heart, Olivia prayed that their child would bring back the tenderness that seemed lost. She had no inkling that Ethan's heart was drifting, that her husband had already ensnared himself in a secret. He couldn't easily escape. But soon, events would conspire in such a way that the truth came roaring into the light. And once it did, nothing would ever be the same for Ethan Reynolds, his adoring wife, and the mistress who sparked it all. A month passed after the San Francisco conference. Naomi and Ethan maintained a covert, flirtatious relationship over text. It started with discussions about marketing strategies, what the tech industry needed to handle brand crises effectively. But soon, their conversations turned personal. Late nights alone in his home office found Ethan leaning back in his leather chair, phone in hand, reading Naomi's witty messages. If Olivia walked in unexpectedly, he'd snap upright and pretend to be analyzing spreadsheets. Between the adrenaline rush of Reynolds' cyber solutions, latest corporate merger, and the allure of Naomi's intellect, Ethan felt intoxicated by life again. He remembered how, as a young man, he had thrived off risk and adventure, taking leaps of faith that either soared or crashed. His career had evened out in recent years. Everything was stable and safe. Yet, in those stabilizing times, he realized he'd lost the edge of unpredictability he once prided himself on. When Olivia hinted at a surprise she wanted to share, Ethan's response was half-hearted. He was preoccupied with the possibility of meeting Naomi again. She had invited him to a marketing summit in Los Angeles, claiming they could collaborate on a project for Reynolds Cyber Solutions' brand revamp. The invitation was professional on the surface. Beneath that veneer, it thrummed with a promise of passion. Olivia tried to sit him down one evening to reveal her pregnancy in the sweetest manner possible. She baked lemon cupcakes, his favorite, and frosted them with tiny footprints. The gesture felt childlike, magical. She set them neatly on a silver tray, waiting by the kitchen table, hands trembling with the excitement of telling him he would be a father. But Ethan returned home in a foul mood. A lawsuit threat from a competitor had him on edge, and the stress hardened his features. He barely glanced at the cupcakes, dismissing them as too sweet for his taste tonight. Olivia, deflated, decided to hold off on her announcement. She sensed this was not the right time. Instead, she wrapped the cupcakes and placed them in the fridge, hoping to try again soon. On the other side of town, Naomi was waiting. Naomi was preparing for Ethan's arrival with a thrill of her own. She booked a luxury suite in a Beverly Hills hotel, convinced Ethan would appreciate the lavish setting. Every detail was carefully curated: Egyptian cotton sheets, vintage wine, dim lighting that whispered seduction. Though Naomi prided herself on being independent and career-focused, there was an undercurrent of deep longing within her. She would never admit it, but beneath the polished confidence, she craved something more than power plays and fleeting dalliances. She wanted to be irreplaceable. She had grown weary of men who couldn't keep up with her, the ones who stammered under pressure, who shrank in the presence of her ambition. Ethan was different. Powerful, resourceful, and respectable in the corporate world. A man who didn't just keep up, he dominated. And she liked that. The forbidden nature of their connection ignited an even more potent spark. It wasn't just an affair, it was defiance. A delicious, reckless rebellion against the constraints of ordinary life. Before leaving for Los Angeles, Ethan concocted a story about needing to finalize a new deal with a West Coast client. The lie slid off his tongue too easily, so practiced, so smooth. Olivia's eyes shone with quiet disappointment, but she didn't protest. She never did, not openly. She simply swallowed the sadness, nodding in quiet resignation, as if she had long accepted that being his wife meant being second to his ambitions. She'd seen him jet off countless times for business, though recently the frequency had soared. Each time he felt her faith in him stretch thinner, like a frayed rope threatening to snap. As Ethan packed his suitcase, he found the ultrasound photo tucked under one of his shirts. Olivia must have hidden it there, maybe as a subtle hint, a silent plea, a reminder that his world was about to change. He picked it up, eyes wide with confusion. The black and white image of a tiny forming life blinked back at him in the half-light, so small yet powerful enough to stop his pulse. For a heartbeat, warmth and wonder filled his chest. The ghost of a dream. One where he was a father, where he cradled his child, where Olivia's laughter filled their home, flashed before him. He realized instantly what it meant. Olivia was pregnant. The fatherhood he once dreamed of was no longer hypothetical. It was here. But then the guilt returned, thick, suffocating, drowning out the flicker of excitement before it could take hold. His flight was booked. His mistress was waiting. His double life had no room for fatherhood. Not yet. This was supposed to be a major turning point in his life. He should have been overjoyed. Instead, conflicting emotions swirled like a tempest. Regret, lust, fear, longing, all battling for dominance. He shoved the photo back into the suitcase without mentioning it to Olivia. Out of sight, out of mind. Or at least that's what he told himself. That night, he said goodbye with a distracted kiss on her forehead and left for the airport. Olivia found out he'd discovered the photo when she saw it was no longer in the drawer where she left it. A wave of devastation hit her. He knew she was pregnant, yet he said nothing. No excitement, no discussion about the future, not even a flicker of acknowledgement. As the door clicked shut behind him, she realized there was a chasm between them she could no longer ignore. A void too deep, too dark, swallowing everything they once were. In Los Angeles, Naomi greeted Ethan at the airport, wearing a designer blouse and a triumphant smile. They took a black car service to the hotel, exchanging conspiratorial looks. Despite the tension gnawing at Ethan's conscience, the attraction he felt for Naomi was overpowering. Guilt was a dull ache, but desire burned hot and immediate. He told himself that at least for the weekend, he would live in the moment. No past, no future. Just this. That evening, after the summit sessions concluded, they retreated to Naomi's suite. The city lights of Los Angeles sprawled beneath them. They opened an expensive bottle of champagne and toasted to collaboration. The vibrant laughter and stolen kisses made Ethan feel alive. But somewhere beneath it all, he sensed the precarious cliff edge he was dancing upon. Back in New York, Olivia sobbed into her pillow. She was no stranger to her husband's business travels, but never had she felt so utterly alone. This was a time they should be celebrating. She was carrying his child. The man she loved was halfway across the country, unresponsive to her calls, too busy to even acknowledge the milestone they'd both dreamed of. With trembling fingers, she scrolled through pictures from their wedding day, remembering the promise in Ethan's eyes, how he vowed to stand by her no matter what. Now, she wondered if that promise had become an afterthought. Two worlds spun in parallel, one in a Beverly Hills hotel suite filled with laughter and sin, the other in a quiet New York penthouse, consumed by tears and heartbreak. And with every passing hour, the threads of Ethan's double life intertwined tighter around his marriage, strangling what little trust remained. When he eventually returned to New York, the evidence of his betrayal would no longer hide so easily. And Olivia, now more emotionally vulnerable than ever, would begin to see the faint outlines of a dark truth. A week after Ethan's LA escapade, news of his potential affair reached the ears of someone who had no intention of keeping it a secret. Danny Moreno, one of Olivia's closest friends and a fellow nurse at the pediatric clinic. Danny was known for her protective nature. She had connections in PR circles, and some of her acquaintances had seen Ethan with Naomi at posh restaurants. Innocent at first glance, but the body language told a different story. Danny wrestled with the decision to tell Olivia, fearing the heartbreak it might cause, but also convinced that a friend's loyalty should include honesty. Meanwhile, Ethan returned home, caught between remorse and longing. He found Olivia's eyes red-rimmed, her face pale. She had been battling morning sickness, but also the weight of an unspoken betrayal. He hesitated to bring up her pregnancy. Guilt gnawed at him. Sensing that now was better than never, Olivia softly announced that they were expecting a baby. She expressed her wish that this child could restore the closeness they once shared. Ethan forced a smile, hugging her stiffly. He murmured words of congratulations, but the spark in his eyes had dimmed. Later that day, Olivia and Danny met for lunch at a quaint cafe near the clinic. Danny agonized over whether to reveal her suspicions. As Olivia spoke about Ethan's distracted behavior, Danny's resolve hardened. Unable to bear watching Olivia suffer, she finally confessed what she had heard. She kept her tone gentle, explaining that she didn't want to upset Olivia without proof. But even as she spoke, Danny's expression betrayed unease, as if she knew the weight of her words might shatter something fragile. But rumors were swirling about Ethan and some marketing consultant. Olivia almost dropped her coffee mug. The sound of ceramic scraping against the table barely registered as her pulse thundered in her ears. For years she had worried that Ethan's constant absences might lead him astray. A whisper of doubt that she had always silenced, convincing herself that his long hours, his late-night meetings, were sacrifices for their future, not signs of betrayal. But she had always brushed the thought aside, trusting his integrity. Now, hearing it from a trusted friend, the possibility morphed into a horrifying reality. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. She felt an odd numbness, as though her emotions had short-circuited, like her body refused to process the possibility that her husband, the man she had built her world around, might be lying to her. When Danny insisted that the rumors might be nothing more than misunderstandings, Olivia's mind churned. Misunderstandings. A word meant to soothe, but it only sharpened the blade of doubt already lodged in her heart. She decided she had to find out for herself, no matter how painful. That evening, Olivia confronted Ethan gently, not with accusations, but with a trembling question. "Is there someone else?" Ethan stiffened, a flicker of panic in his eyes. A moment of hesitation so brief it was almost imperceptible, but Olivia saw it, felt it. He had rehearsed excuses before, lines he had perfected in front of the mirror, strategies to deflect, to soothe, to manipulate. But he never believed Olivia would directly ask him. With a tight swallow, he denied everything, attributing his distance to work stress. Olivia's heart twisted. She wanted to believe him, needed to, because if he was lying, then everything, their love, their life, their future, was a beautifully constructed lie. But the doubt festered. Over the next few days, Olivia noticed small details she had overlooked before. The different cologne smell on Ethan's clothes. Not the warm musk she had bought him, but something sharper, unfamiliar. Unexplained credit card charges in cities he claimed were purely for business. Hotel stays that didn't match his itinerary. Dinners for two when he was supposed to be alone. The way he guarded his phone. How his body tensed when she reached for it. How he stepped out of the room for certain calls. She began collecting these clues like shards of broken glass, each one cutting a little deeper, leaving wounds that no apology could mend. Then she discovered a lipstick-stained cocktail napkin in his briefcase. It had unfamiliar handwriting. "Until next time, N." Her stomach clenched at the sight of it. The world tilted, nausea rising, not from her pregnancy but from the sickening confirmation of her worst fears. Still, Ethan insisted. Everything was normal. That her pregnancy was making her overthink, that she was emotional, that she was being paranoid. Yet, he grew increasingly agitated when Olivia pressed for any details about his trips. She tried to remain calm, but a storm of conflicting emotions raged inside her. Love, betrayal, despair. She remembered their wedding vows, how he had promised her forever, how she had believed him. The happy tears on her parents' faces as she walked down the aisle, convinced she had found a man of integrity. Now it felt like her world was on the brink of collapse, and she was left to pick up the pieces alone. Miles away, Naomi kept up her end of the secret, delighting in the clandestine nature of their relationship. She savored it. The thrill of being wanted, of knowing Olivia was blind to what was happening behind closed doors. She didn't see Olivia as a real obstacle, because in her view, Ethan was already drifting from his marriage. She believed it was only a matter of time before he made his choice. And when he did, Naomi intended to be the one left standing. She even pressed Ethan to be honest with Olivia, to set himself free. But Ethan, paralyzed by guilt, opted for denial. Because lies, once spoken, have a way of chaining a man to the choices he's too afraid to face. A part of him might have wanted to end the affair, but he was too weak to relinquish the thrill Naomi offered. Another part still cared for Olivia deeply, especially now that she was pregnant with his child. In her desperation, Olivia decided to contact one of Ethan's confidants, an old family friend named Rick Caldwell. Rick was one of the few people Ethan truly listened to, a retired businessman who had advised him when he launched Reynolds Cyber Solutions. Olivia poured out her worries, tears breaking through her usually composed facade. Rick, too, had noticed a change in Ethan's behavior. Missed appointments, abrupt secrecy, a newfound recklessness in his business dealings. Concerned, he offered to speak to Ethan man to man. When Rick cornered Ethan in his office one morning, Ethan bristled. He insisted he was fine, that his marriage was intact. But Rick pressed, warning him that chasing fleeting temptation could destroy his life. He reminded Ethan of the shame he'd feel if the media sniffed out a scandal. He also reminded him of the family he was about to start. Ethan sank into his office chair, head in his hands, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his double life. For a fleeting moment, he resolved to end the affair. But endings are not always clean. While Ethan planned to break things off, Naomi had lined up a new deal in London for one of her clients, offering Reynolds Cyber Solutions a seat at the negotiation table. The allure of expanding his business overseas with Naomi by his side was too enticing to pass up. He rationalized that it was a strictly professional opportunity, that once it was done, he could separate from Naomi gracefully. Yet deep down, he knew he was stepping closer to the precipice. That afternoon, Olivia found out about the London trip by accident. She saw a confirmation email on Ethan's tablet. He hadn't mentioned it to her. The knowledge sliced through her, fueling both suspicion and an unshakable certainty. Ethan was lying. She confronted him, tears streaming, as she begged him to be honest. He fired back with frustration, claiming she was overreacting, that he needed to secure this deal for the future of their child. He argued that her questions were undermining his confidence. Their argument escalated, harsh words flying in the penthouse that had once been a haven of warmth and love. In a fit of rage, Ethan stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the walls. Olivia, feeling the baby inside her, a life that needed stability and care, sank to the floor, hugging her stomach. She knew then that the man she had loved might be gone, lost beneath the weight of betrayal, replaced by someone she scarcely recognized. The mask each of them wore had begun to slip, Ethan's of a faithful husband, Naomi's of a mere consultant, Olivia's of a woman denying the truth. No more illusions, no more pretending. Raw emotions and hidden agendas would soon collide, and when they did, the consequences would not only shatter their private worlds, but reverberate far beyond, leaving reputations, relationships, and even fortunes hanging in the balance. There would be no winners in the wreckage, only survivors. The day Ethan flew to London was overcast, matching his mood. The sky hung heavy with storm clouds, as if the universe itself mirrored the chaos unraveling inside him. He boarded the plane with a hollow feeling in his chest. Naomi would join him a few days later. And although the thought of seeing her sent a rush of anticipation through his veins, the memory of Olivia's tear-streaked face lingered, souring the excitement. He had chosen this path, hadn't he? No one had forced his hand. So why did it suddenly feel like every step forward dragged him deeper into quicksand? Back in New York, Olivia made a decision that tested her resolve. She contacted a private investigator, a woman named Isabella "Izzy" Navarro, known for her discretion and thoroughness. Olivia had spent too many nights drowning in uncertainty, gasping for air in a sea of half-truths. No more. She would uncover the truth, even if it destroyed her. As much as Olivia hated the idea of prying into Ethan's life, her intuition screamed that she needed evidence. Cold, irrefutable proof. Something undeniable. Something that would shatter any excuse Ethan might spin. If he won't tell me the truth, I'll find it myself, she reasoned, heart pounding with trepidation. Izzy listened compassionately as Olivia explained the situation. The suspicious trips, the rumors, the emotional distance, the way Ethan's eyes had started carrying secrets he refused to share. At the mention of Naomi's name, Izzy took careful notes. She informed Olivia that tailing someone overseas would be pricey, but if Olivia could provide travel details, she might glean enough from local contacts and digital footprints, without physically being in London. This won't just give you answers, Izzy warned. It'll change everything. Are you ready for that? Fueled by heartbreak, Olivia wrote a check that made her hand tremble. A part of her screamed to stop, to close her eyes, to pretend. But the woman she used to be had already died, and the one replacing her needed the truth. With it, she placed her final hopes of discovering the truth. Meanwhile, Ethan was juggling business meetings in the upscale district of Mayfair. The negotiations for Reynolds Cyber Solutions expansion were intense. He knew a successful deal could cement his reputation, drawing him closer to the business titans he'd admired in his youth. Yet, every time he stepped outside the boardroom, he caught himself checking his phone for messages from Olivia or from Naomi. One text would make his stomach twist with guilt, the other with desire. But in the end, both were just different chains binding to a future he hadn't fully chosen. Naomi arrived wearing a sleek coat. Greeting him with a brazen kiss on the cheek in the hotel lobby, they had separate rooms for propriety's sake. But they both knew it was only a facade. The nights melted into a blur of extravagant dinners and stolen embraces, One evening, Naomi booked a private dinner at a posh restaurant that overlooked the Thames. Over candlelight, she pressed him on the future. "When this deal is done," she whispered, "where do we stand?" Ethan paused, swirling the wine in his glass. "I don't know. I'm not proud of any of this, Naomi. I can't just walk away from Olivia. He faltered. The image of Olivia as an expectant mother sliced into his conscience. "She's pregnant." Naomi's eyes widened. For a split second, a flicker of jealousy mixed with something akin to fear. But her ambition wouldn't let her walk away so easily. "If she's pregnant," she said quietly, her voice laced with urgency, "then you have more reason than ever to decide what you really want." "Ethan, I can't keep doing this halfway. Either you break it off with her, or I leave." The threat hung in the air. Back in New York, Olivia anxiously awaited Izzy's updates. She busied herself by volunteering extra hours at the clinic, as if caring for children could offer some balm for her wounded heart. Danny stood by her side, whispering words of encouragement, occasionally glancing at Olivia's growing belly with concern. Though Olivia wanted to remain strong, each day felt heavier. The tears came at odd moments. Passing a baby store, hearing a love song on the radio, recalling how Ethan used to surprise her with small tokens of affection. She wondered if that man was gone forever. One night, Izzy sent an encrypted email. Olivia opened it with trembling fingers. Attached were photos of Ethan and Naomi dining at an upscale establishment in London, arm-linked as they left. One image showed them kissing on a deserted sidewalk, illuminated by the glow of streetlights. Olivia clenched her teeth, tears slipping down her cheeks. There it was, undeniable proof, all her worst fears confirmed in a single snapshot. Rage, heartbreak, a strange sense of relief. They rolled over her in waves. She wasn't crazy, he was truly betraying her. She stared at the images long after her tears dried, her mind whirring. She thought of confronting Ethan the moment he returned, demanding an explanation. But as she stared at Naomi's smug expression, a darker notion seeped in. He did this to me. While I'm carrying his child, why should I be the only one suffering? When Ethan eventually returned from London, carrying a stack of business documents and a forced air of triumph, Olivia was waiting. She had printed the photos and laid them on the living room table. No shouting greeted him, no tears, just deafening silence as he walked in, the weight of the air pressing down like a storm about to break. His expression darkened the moment he realized what she had discovered. Olivia stood by the window, arms crossed protectively over her stomach. The city lights reflected in the glass, but she felt nothing of their warmth. "I know," she said, voice trembling but resolute. "I have the photos. I know everything. You didn't even have the decency to hide it well, did you?" Ethan's face went pale. He had prepared for arguments, for tears, even for rage. But this quiet devastation, rattled him more than any screaming match ever could. He opened his mouth to protest, but the words died in his throat. For a moment, he looked like a frightened boy, cornered and remorseful. "Olivia, I don't," she snapped. "Don't insult me with another lie. I gave you every chance to tell me. I begged for honesty. But you chose to leave me here, alone and pregnant, while you gallivanted around London with your mistress." Her voice cracked on the word pregnant, and Ethan felt his heart sink. That one word cut deeper than he was prepared for, because it wasn't just anger in her voice. It was heartbreak. It was betrayal, wrapped in grief. "I'm sorry," he breathed, at a loss for anything else. "I never meant to hurt you." Olivia gave a bitter laugh, tears threatening to spill. A sound that once held joy now rang hollow, laced with pain so deep it made her chest ache. "Do you have any idea what you've done? I believed in you. I waited for you, night after night, kept your secrets, cheered you on, and this is how you repay me? With betrayal?" With her every word, the love she once held for him crumbled like ash in her hands. He tried to approach her, arms outstretched in some misguided attempt at comfort. She recoiled. "Don't," she warned. "You made your choice. You think I'm a fool? You humiliated me. You might have jeopardized everything we worked for." Ethan swallowed hard, guilt gnawing at him. For years he had convinced himself he was the master of control, of calculated risks. But this was destruction he never accounted for. "Olivia, please. I was weak. I know this is all my fault, but we can try to fix it, can't we? I don't want to lose you or our child." She stared at him with disdain. Whatever love she once had for him, Whatever hope she had clung to was slipping through her fingers like water. Fix it? You want to fix it now? Because now that you're caught, you suddenly care? Her voice roared with pain and anger, the dam of restraint finally cracking. I'm not sure if there's anything left to fix. You need to leave. The finality of her words hit him like a sledgehammer. He pleaded, tried to reason, offered every apology, every excuse, every desperate promise he could muster. But Olivia stood firm. She refused to let him remain in the penthouse, the place that had once been their fortress of love, the place where she had dreamed of a future he had already abandoned. Eventually, with shame burning his cheeks, Ethan packed a suitcase and left. Though Olivia had demanded he go, the moment the door clicked shut behind him, she crumpled. A part of her shattered, breaking under the weight of everything she had lost. She sank to her knees, hands resting on her belly, tears flowing anew. For the first time since learning she was pregnant, she questioned if she even wanted Ethan's involvement at all. Yes, she needed financial support, but emotionally, he had already left her, following the siren call of Naomi. What future was left for a man who chose desire over devotion? For Ethan, stepping out into the city night with a suitcase in hand was surreal. The empire he built suddenly felt like an empty shell. Naomi might welcome him with open arms, but what had he truly gained? He was left only with regret and a moral hangover he couldn't shake. As he hailed a taxi, he recognized that everything he once took for granted, his wife's trust, the sanctity of his home, was unraveling, and in its wake, a tsunami of consequences was about to break. In the aftermath of Ethan's exile from his own penthouse, Naomi seized the moment to solidify her place in his life. She invited him to stay at her upscale apartment in Midtown, an offer he initially resisted. His pride balked at the thought of moving into his lover's space, but he had few alternatives. Most of the high-end hotels he frequented were either too visible or held memories of clandestine nights with Naomi. Risks he couldn't afford with the rising tide of gossip. The arrangement was tense from the start. While Naomi tried to establish a sense of domesticity, cooking dinner, arranging fresh flowers in the living room, Ethan found himself overwhelmed by guilt. He stared out the window of her lavish high-rise, missing the warmth of home, the gentleness of Olivia, the intangible comfort of a marriage that once seemed unbreakable. Meanwhile, Naomi insisted he should cut ties with Olivia, finalize a separation, and brace for the inevitable media storm. What neither Ethan nor Naomi anticipated was Olivia's fury evolving into something sharper, a thirst for revenge. She had grown tired of being the victim, of sobbing into her pillow, while her betrayer waltzed off with his mistress. The pain hardened into anger, which she channeled into action. Quietly, she began building a strategy to ensure Ethan felt the consequences of his betrayal. And she started by leveraging his greatest vulnerability, his public image. Olivia had never been one to seek the limelight, but she was aware of the power wielded by headlines. Through her volunteer work, she had connections in philanthropic circles, as well as local news outlets. She also kept an archive of philanthropic events that featured Ethan's name, charities he supported, galas he sponsored. She knew how important it was for Reynolds Cyber Solutions to maintain a squeaky clean reputation, especially with the international. One evening, she confided in Danny, who was shocked by her newfound resolve. This wasn't the same Olivia who once defended Ethan, who once made excuses for his absence, who once believed love could fix anything. That Olivia was gone. Are you sure you want to do this? Exposing him publicly could get messy, Danny cautioned, her voice low, as if speaking the words aloud would make them irreversible. Olivia's jaw set in determination. Her hands trembled slightly, but she clenched them into fists, steadying herself. He's the one who dragged me into this mess. He turned our life into a scandal. Why should I shield him from the truth any longer? She shot Danny a look that mingled heartbreak with cold resolve. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to shed them. Not anymore. He made his bed. Now he can lie in it. And she would be the one to flip the mattress. Olivia reached out to a contact at a local paper, a journalist named Rachel Adler, who had once interviewed Ethan for a human interest piece on promising entrepreneurs. Rachel was sympathetic to Olivia's plight, but she also recognized the potential for a front-page story. Scandal sells. And when it involves a millionaire tech mogul with a pregnant wife and a mistress in the wings, it's tabloid gold. With Olivia's permission, she launched her own quiet investigation, collecting statements from anonymous sources, cross-checking Ethan's travel records, discreetly confirming the rumors of an affair. "If I'm going to do this," Rachel had said, "I need undeniable proof. Once this goes live, there's no taking it back." Rachel even managed to speak to a staff member at the London restaurant, someone who remembered seeing Ethan and Naomi looking quite intimate. They weren't just colleagues, the staff member revealed with a smirk. "Trust me, I've seen enough power couples trying to keep things quiet. The way they looked at each other, it wasn't business." Before the story could break, Reynolds Cyber Solutions' PR team caught wind of the brewing scandal. Immediately, they attempted damage control, scheduling an emergency meeting with Ethan. His reputation was currency, and the market was about to crash. Naomi warned him that negative press could torpedo his international expansion. But Ethan, drained from the emotional turmoil, struggled to muster a coherent defense. His mind was a battlefield, one side clinging to Naomi, to the thrill she brought, to the life he had chased. The other side haunted by Olivia's tearful face, by the future he had thrown away. He oscillated between wanting to salvage his marriage and clinging to Naomi like a lifeline in a storm he had created. Except the storm wasn't passing, it was about to make landfall. The tension reached a fever pitch when a tabloid published a teaser. Millionaire philanthropist Ethan Reynolds in shocking love triangle. Sources claim wife is pregnant. The piece included a blurred photo of Ethan with a dark-haired woman, believed to be Naomi. Though the article withheld full names, it was enough to set off a torrent of speculation in the business community. Once the headline hit, there was no stopping it. It spread like wildfire. Whispers in boardrooms, hushed conversations at charity galas, frantic phone calls from investors demanding answers. Clients began calling Reynolds Cyber Solutions offices, anxiously asking if the rumors were true. Investors worried about a scandal overshadowing the company's progress. Ethan had spent years meticulously crafting his image, an entrepreneur with integrity, a visionary leader. And now, all it took was one article to turn him into a walking scandal. Olivia watched from the sidelines, a swirl of satisfaction mingling with regret. She had never wanted to become a public spectacle, but the seeds of her revenge were sprouting. And revenge, once planted, does not stop growing. A part of her regretted exposing herself and her unborn child to the harsh glare of tabloid gossip. Yet, a colder, embittered part told her, Ethan deserved every bit of the fallout. If he wanted to destroy their marriage for a fling, he had to face the repercussions. His choices had led them here. Now, he would have to live with them. Naomi, furious at the leak, confronted Ethan. "You said you'd handle Olivia," she hissed, pacing the length of her living room. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step a sharp punctuation to her rage. Now we're under attack from every angle. Do something. Naomi's voice sliced through the tension in the room like a well-aimed dagger. Ethan ran a frustrated hand through his hair, his exhaustion palpable. "And what exactly do you propose I do?" he muttered. "Olivia is not exactly willing to talk to me, and the press is feeding on any scraps they can find." Naomi's eyes flashed. "Hire a crisis PR firm, for starters," she snapped. "Spin the narrative. Deny everything. Or—" She paused dramatically, as if waiting for an imaginary drum roll. "Offer a statement that you've amicably separated from Olivia, that your relationship is private. Anything to quell the rumors." Ethan shook his head, bristling. "You expect me to just publicly abandon my pregnant wife? Even if we're going through a rough patch, that's low." For an instant, Naomi's features softened. "I'm not heartless, Ethan, but we have to be realistic. If Olivia keeps fanning the flames, it could destroy Reynolds Cyber Solutions and everything you've built. Is that what you want?" Ethan remained silent, turmoil etched on his face. His moral compass had been shattered by his own actions. Now, financial ruin loomed like an unwelcome houseguest. Deep down, he realized just how far he had strayed from the values he once cherished. Conflicted, he turned away from Naomi's piercing gaze, as if searching for answers in the city lights outside her window. Meanwhile, in the swirl of public speculation, Olivia experienced a mixture of anxiety and vindication. She received a call from Rick Caldwell, Ethan's old friend, who pleaded with her to reconsider her public approach. "Olivia, he's made mistakes, but you're airing dirty laundry that might never go away," Rick said softly. "This could affect the baby someday." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, but her voice stayed firm. "Rick, I'm done protecting him. He lied to me. He cheated on me while I was pregnant. I deserve better. If he wanted to avoid scandal, maybe he shouldn't have created one." As the scandal intensified, Reynolds Cyber Solutions' board of directors expressed dismay at Ethan's personal entanglements overshadowing business. They convened an emergency session, whispering amongst themselves in corporate corridors. Is his leadership compromised? What happens if Olivia sues? What if she gives a tell-all interview? And the ultimate whisper: what if we have to ask him to step down? A bitter irony, considering how close he was to finalizing the London deal. All the while, Olivia was collecting more evidence, not just of the affair, but of potential misuse of company funds for personal trysts, expensive dinners, hotel suites, flights, all billed as business expenses. If Reynolds Cyber Solutions had inadvertently paid for Ethan's affair, it could spell legal trouble, a PR nightmare. Part of Olivia hated how vindictive she had become, but each time she thought about it, she reminded herself. She didn't start this war, but she damn sure was going to finish it. She felt a pang of guilt, a flicker of doubt, a whisper of regret. She remembered the humiliation of seeing photos of Ethan with Naomi, the nights of sleeping alone, the heartbreak of hearing him lie, the realization that the man she had loved, trusted, built a future with, had chosen someone else. For Ethan, the mistress who once represented excitement and escape, now felt like an anchor dragging him down. What had once been intoxicating was now suffocating. When he overheard Naomi on the phone, boasting to a colleague about managing the PR fiasco, a chill ran through him. She sounded triumphant, almost amused by the chaos. Like this was just another business deal to spin, another problem to fix. He realized that while she had once lit a spark of passion in his life, the cost was now crippling. Not just his marriage, but his career, his legacy. Even his self-respect was on the line. Everything he had built, his name, his empire, his carefully constructed image, was crumbling. And Naomi? She was watching it burn with a glass of wine in hand. Was she worth it? He wondered, a pang of regret twisting his insides. Yet the time for second-guessing had passed. Consequences he never imagined were already in motion, and now they were unstoppable. The scandal was no longer containable, and Olivia, his loving, gentle wife, who had once been content to stand in his shadow, was now poised to become the biggest threat to his carefully cultivated empire. She had been the quiet force behind his success. Now she was the storm that could bring it all down. The day Olivia filed for a legal separation was the day Ethan realized just how precarious his situation had become. This wasn't just a marriage ending. This was a reckoning. A courier arrived at Naomi's apartment, carrying a thick envelope bearing Olivia's signature. Inside were documents detailing their assets, a proposed custody agreement for their unborn child, an official statement that any further contact between them should be handled through their respective attorneys. Ethan sank onto the couch, hands shaking. Despite everything, he hadn't expected Olivia to move so decisively. She wasn't begging for explanations. She wasn't pleading for closure. She was simply done. He'd harbored a faint hope that they could reconcile, that she might eventually forgive him. But Olivia's actions were as clear as a slammed door. She was done waiting, done hurting, and now it was his turn to suffer. His heart hammered as he read the legal terms, words like alimony and primary custody leaping off the page. Each one felt like a blow, not just to his finances, but to his ego, to the life he had taken for granted. Naomi hovered over him, arms crossed. "So what now?" she asked, her voice taut. She glanced at the legal documents, reading the subtext, how Olivia intended to keep Ethan at arm's length, how she wasn't just cutting ties, she was erasing him. "Are you going to fight her?" Ethan rubbed his temples, a headache pounding. "I don't want a lengthy legal battle. She's pregnant with my child. This is not how I wanted it to go." Naomi's eyes narrowed. "You should have thought about that before sneaking around with me," she said, voice sharp. "But it's how it's going. Unless you do something. If she drags your name through the mud in court, your reputation might never recover. It could kill the London deal too." Ethan scowled. All you ever think about is that deal. He looked at her then, really looked at her. This woman he had risked everything for. And for the first time, he wondered if she had ever truly cared about him at all. A child is involved, Naomi. My child, this isn't just a PR crisis. She pressed her lips into a thin line but said nothing. In her mind, there was no separating the personal from the professional. Everything was connected. At Reynolds Cyber Solutions, the crisis had escalated. The London partners were growing uneasy with the negative press. One of Ethan's biggest domestic clients hinted at pulling out of a contract if the scandal deepened. During a tense board meeting, the directors debated the possibility of removing Ethan as CEO, at least temporarily. An interim leader could create distance between the company and the affair. Though no formal decision had been made, the threat loomed large. Exhausted and cornered, Ethan decided to approach Olivia directly, despite the legal documents suggesting otherwise. He found her at the volunteer clinic, crouched beside a young patient's bed, whispering soothing words. For a moment, his heart clenched. She had once directed that same gentle care toward him. Then she rose, recognized his presence, and her expression hardened. Olivia, he began softly, I know you said everything should go through lawyers, but I wanted to see if we could talk this through privately. She glanced around, noticing the curious stares from nurses. Not here, she said tightly. Wait outside. I have a 10-minute break. When she joined him in the corridor, he saw the toll the past weeks had taken on her. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hand instinctively rested on her stomach in a protective gesture. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came. Finally, he exhaled and said the only words that came to mind. I'm sorry. She nodded once, but her eyes were cold. I'm sure you are, but apologies don't erase betrayal. He swallowed hard. I know, I don't expect forgiveness overnight. Or maybe ever, she cut in. I just wanted you to hear from me that I never meant to hurt you like this. Her shoulders trembled slightly. But you did, she whispered. You hurt me more than I ever thought possible, and now I have to protect myself and this baby from any further damage. Ethan's throat tightened. I understand why you filed for separation, but do we have to go through the courts? Couldn't we handle this differently? Less publicly? Her eyes flashed. Are you worried about what people will think, Ethan? Is that it? Your image? Your business deals? He exhaled, wrestling with his pride. I'm worried about everything, including that. But I swear, I also care about you and the baby. I don't want you to suffer. She let out a bitter laugh. You think I'm not suffering? You made me a tabloid headline. You turned our marriage into a public spectacle, a joke for strangers to gossip about. And now you're living with her. How dare you come here acting like you're the wounded one? Ethan winced at the bite in her words. He had braced himself for anger, but nothing prepared him for the raw fury in Olivia's eyes. I'm not, he admitted. The words felt hollow, pathetic even. Because wasn't he? Wounded by the very wreckage he created? I'm just asking for a chance to handle this without blowing up our entire lives. We can do mediation, or at least talk to each other, not just lawyers, for the baby's sake. She studied him for a long moment, jaw tight. The silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of everything unspoken. Finally, she said, Fine, I'll consider mediation, but only if you agree to certain terms. Her voice was steady, but her hands curled into fists at her sides, as if bracing for a fight. First, you need to move out of her place. I can't negotiate with you while you're shackled to your mistress. Second, no more lies. If I catch you hiding anything else or spending company funds on personal escapades, I'm done talking. A surge of relief mixed with dread swept through him. Freedom came with a price, and he wasn't sure he could afford it. Okay, I'll do what you ask. But you should know, Naomi is also integral to some of my business deals. I might need to keep working with her in that capacity. Olivia's expression didn't change. If he had expected sympathy, a hint of understanding, he found none. That's between you and your board, she said flatly. My terms are personal. Abide by them, or our next interaction is in a courtroom. She turned on her heel, leaving Ethan standing there, caught in a swirl of conflicting emotions. The air crackled with finality. He knew that telling Naomi he needed to move out would be explosive. Yet if he refused, the legal war with Olivia might destroy him entirely. The lines he once blurred between personal desire and professional ambition now had razor-sharp edges, and they were cutting him apart. Later that night, Ethan informed Naomi of Olivia's ultimatum. As expected, she erupted. "You want me to believe you're moving out just to appease your wife's demands?" she sneered. Her tone dripped with venom, but underneath it there was something else: panic. "You realize this is a step backward in our relationship, right?" Ethan sighed, exhaustion lacing every word. "I realize that every step I take now is a step toward losing something. It's a compromise, Naomi. If we can settle this civilly, I might salvage some part of my relationship with my child. Otherwise, Olivia is going to war, and I'll lose everything." Naomi's expression flickered with something akin to fear. For the first time, she seemed to grasp the reality of it all. "And what about us? Do I mean so little that you'll just walk away from what we have?" He thought about the stolen kisses, the rush of excitement he once felt in her presence. Now, all he felt was suffocating guilt. She had been an escape. Now she was just another chain around his neck. "I don't know what to say. I never planned for any of this to happen, but I need time to fix things, or at least to stop the bleeding." Naomi pressed her lips together, tears threatening. For all her bravado, she had staked her pride on Ethan leaving Olivia for good. Instead, he was stepping away from her, or at least from cohabitation. In that moment, she felt the precariousness of her position. If Ethan managed to reconcile with Olivia, she'd become a memory, a stain he'd try to wash away. She loathed the idea of losing him, especially after all she'd risked. 2 days later, Ethan moved into a penthouse suite owned by a business associate who offered it discreetly. He informed Olivia of the address, fulfilling that part of her condition. Despite the hostility between them, Olivia felt a faint sense of grim satisfaction, knowing he had left Naomi's apartment. Still, her mind spun with doubts. Was she truly prepared to negotiate? Could she ever trust him again, even for the sake of their baby? In this fragile détente, each of them stood at a crossroads. Olivia wrestled with her anger, uncertain whether the talk of mediation was just a ploy. Ethan walked on eggshells, torn between guilt and the last vestiges of his ambition. Naomi smoldered in quiet fury, determined not to be cast aside so easily. And somewhere in the background, the ticking clock of public opinion and Reynolds Cyber Solutions' precarious deals continued to push them all toward a breaking point, one that mediation alone might not fix. Following their painful confrontation, Ethan and Olivia reluctantly agreed to a mediation session with Dr. Martin Rice, who urged them to focus on the welfare of their unborn child. For a moment, hope flickered that they might settle things quietly. But Naomi's sudden interview shattered that fragile peace. She gloated about her true connection with Ethan. Mid-session, Olivia read the headline on her phone and erupted in anger. Feeling betrayed once again, she stormed out, furious. Hours later, she granted her own interview, sharing how Ethan abandoned her during pregnancy for a flashy affair. Public sympathy swung decisively in her favor. Reporters questioned Ethan's integrity and Naomi's motives. Under immense pressure, Reynolds Cyber Solutions board demanded that Ethan step aside as CEO if the scandal worsened. Naomi, sensing Olivia's fury and craving attention, fanned the flames with more provocative comments. Meanwhile, Olivia wrestled with her conscience, torn between protecting her reputation and wanting Ethan to face the consequences of his betrayal. Desperate to avoid a full-blown legal battle, Ethan begged Olivia for a civil resolution. She demanded he move out of Naomi's apartment and cease all contact with his mistress. Though, pained by her ultimatum, he conceded, fearing total ruin. For the first time in his life, Ethan Reynolds had no power, no control. He wasn't negotiating a business deal. He was bargaining for the scraps of his own existence. When he informed Naomi of his decision, her rage was swift. She threatened to expose every detail of their affair. Every whispered promise, every night spent tangled in secrecy. "I won't go down alone," she hissed, eyes flashing. "If I lose everything, so do you." With each new headline, Olivia hardened her resolve. She was done being a victim, no longer content to suffer in silence. She wielded the truth like a sword, determined to make Ethan feel the full weight of his choices. She didn't revel in his suffering, but she also didn't stop it. This was the path he had chosen. She was merely ensuring he walked it to the end. Meanwhile, Ethan teetered on the brink, realizing that in chasing Naomi's allure, he had lost everything he once held dear. A wife who had loved him unconditionally. A family he hadn't even had the chance to hold. A reputation built on years of sacrifice, gone in a matter of weeks. Then came the final blow. The board at Reynolds Cyber Solutions announced a vote of no confidence. The scandal had tainted his company's reputation. Influential partners threatened to walk away. The business empire he built was slipping through his fingers. And this time, no brilliant pitch or last-minute deal could save him. He soon realized Naomi's persistent interviews and sensational claims were only fueling the media frenzy. She thrived in the chaos while he drowned in it. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to drag him under with her. Determined to salvage what little remained of his dignity, Ethan confronted her late one night. She was waiting for him, drink in hand, eyes sharp as glass. "This is over," he said, voice hollow. "For good." Despite her angry threats and tears, he walked away, desperate to repair the damage he had done, even if it was too late. Meanwhile, Olivia grew weary of the relentless spotlight. Every morning brought a new headline, dissecting her pain, her pregnancy, and Naomi's shameless attempts to rewrite the story. The world watched her, judged her, pitied her. But they didn't know her. They didn't know the nights she had spent staring at the ceiling, wondering how she had ended up here. Feeling protective of her unborn child, she decided that while she could never forget Ethan's betrayal, she would allow him a chance to be present for doctor's appointments, on her terms. Because whatever else he had done, he was still the father of her child. And she refused to let her child grow up haunted by the mistakes of their parents. In a final act of desperation, Naomi held a press conference. She painted herself as misunderstood, a woman unfairly vilified. Yet her self-serving narrative fell flat. The public had already chosen a side, and it wasn't hers. The public sympathized with Olivia. She had revealed only what was necessary, enough to expose Ethan's betrayal, without relishing in his downfall. Because Olivia didn't need revenge anymore, she had already won. Stripped of his title as CEO, Ethan showed up at Olivia's doorstep, carrying nothing but remorse. No arrogance, no excuses, just the weight of his regrets. He apologized, admitting his missteps had cost him everything. Still conflicted, Olivia let him attend an ultrasound appointment. Hearing the steady rhythm of their baby's heartbeat, they both wept. For what was lost, for what might still be salvaged. A glimmer of hope amidst the wreckage. Naomi, her influence waning, quietly left New York. Some speculated she sought a fresh start overseas. Others whispered that she was running from her own humiliation. Either way, no one cared enough to follow her. Ethan, on the other hand, stepped back from the business world to focus on redeeming himself in Olivia's eyes. Though pain and anger lingered, a fragile understanding took root. They would co-parent, provide love and stability for the child. It wasn't the fairy tale ending either had envisioned. But through the ruins of shattered trust, they found one small path toward healing. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe someday. A reminder that even broken things can still hold meaning. Crowns can sometimes be reforged. Thank you for tuning in to this emotional roller coaster of love, betrayal, and redemption. Olivia's journey, from supportive wife to determined survivor, shows us all that strength can emerge from heartbreak. While Ethan's fall from grace reminds us that even the grandest success can crumble under the weight of lies. As these characters struggle to pick up the pieces, we see how trust can be shattered in an instant, and how forgiveness can take a lifetime to earn. If this dramatic story captivated you and kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel for more gripping tales of real-life drama fiction. By joining us on this storytelling journey, you help keep these stories alive. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.